Welcome. Let's begin. So we're up to Perek Sheni, the second Perek in Yana Shal Melech HaMoshiach behalacha. Now we're going to talk about the concept of Mashiach in halacha. Chazar Malchus Beis Dovid, the return of the kingdom of David, Ushleimus Mishpati HaTorah, and the perfection and the completion of the laws in Torah. So Kafisha Tzivin Le'el, like we brought before, Echad HaMekoimes HaIkrim Bahem HaRambam Mevarim Mevair Es HaMusag Yemais HaMashiach. One of the main places that the Rambam clarifies and explains the concept of Yemais HaMoshiach is B'shnei HaParakim Acharonim Shel Hilchos Malachim, and the last two chapters of the laws of Malachim, the laws of kings, which are called also in the name Hilchos Melech HaMoshiach. The first parak between them, which is parak Yud Aleph, Oisik Be'ikar B'demusay Shel Melech HaMoshiach Atzmei. We're mainly dealing with the person, Melech HaMoshiach himself. Pe'ulasav v'v'seides galusai, his effects, what he does, and the way he's going to be revealed. The second parak, which is Yud Beis, deals with the situation in the world in the days of Mashiach. The peace and the tranquility that is going to rest in a physical way and in a spiritual way. And any additional details that are connected to this. In the following chapters, we are going to stand on the fundamental points in these parakim to understand the meaning of the coming of Mashiach the way the Rambam defines it, with getting some clarity through the words of the Rebbe. We already explained the Nekoda, the point. That in these chapters the Rambam defines the Yemais HaMoshiach as a time that the kingship of Hashem is going to be revealed. That everybody will accept upon them the yoke of Hashem's kingship and will fulfill His commandments. And Hashem will rule on them forever and ever. These chapters in Rambam with regards to Melech HaMoshiach, it's part of the laws of kings and its completion. Why? That this is the inner purpose of a Jewish king in general, to reveal Hashem's kingship in the world and in the Yidden. The perfection of that will be through Melech HaMoshiach. To understand with extra explanation, let's preface and let's meditate on the meaning of a king. What does it mean to be a king? That according to this, we'll understand the meaning of a Jewish king, like we said before. Malchus Hashem Yisbarach, which is Hashem's kingship over the Yidden. Malchus Yisrael Shlamata. Then you have the kingship of the Jewish king of above, which is Hashem's kingship, and then the Jewish kingship of below, Malchus Beis Dovid, the king from the house of David. According to all this, we'll understand also what is the inyan of Mashiach. What is the Mashiach's purpose, point? Shemachzir as Malchus Beis Dovid, the Yoshna, that he returns the kingdom of David to its former glory, Magalis Malchus Yisbarach b'chol ha'olam la'olam, and he reveals Hashem's kingship in the entire world and to the world. Malchus Hashem Yisrael, Hashem's kingship over the Yidden. But Malchus b'chlal, in a king, there is, in general, there's two concepts. Hanagas ha'melucha b'poil. There's the practical kingship, asher yotim asher yiviem. Those that go out, those that come in. She'amelech manig za'am, that the king is guiding the nation, leading the nation. And he's basically bringing order to the country. That's number one. And number two, hakoyach shel hamelech lahanig za'am miyusad ala yachas hanafshi apnimi shebin hamelech ve'ha'am. The power, the special power of a king to be able to run the nation and to guide the nation is founded on the the soulful connection, inner connection between a king and his nation. In a spiritual sense, the king is head and shoulders above the entire nation. That he has an exalted soul, that he is exalted and elevated over the entire nation. And the nation, on their part, they crown the king over them, with will, and they subjugate themselves with awe and fear. Like the Chazal say, you shall surely place a king upon yourself, and you should have fear on him. And the definition of the Rambam that they place their knowledge, their thought that he is their master and they are as servants to him. The Malchus, the kingship of below the earth is like the kingship of the heavens. Just like being that this is the way it is for kings of flesh and blood, it's similarly to Hashem with regards to Hashem. Like we said before in previous chapters, that the covenant that Hashem made with the Jews in Yetzias Mitzrayim, in the Exodus from Egypt, and receiving the Torah, they compared it to a bris, a covenant between a king and his nation. That Hashem revealed his kingship over the Yidden. And the Yidden made with Hashem, the Jews made with God, and became his servants. Nasu Am Hashem, they became the nation of Hashem and his servants that are now obligated to keep the mitzvahs. And we can find in this also similarly two concepts that are connected and very similar to the two concepts of kingship. Number one, the inner and soulful connection between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem chose us to be his servants. And we chose Hashem to be our king. And we accepted upon ourselves Hashem's kingship willingly. And we subjugated ourselves in front of him. That's number one. So that's the kesher nafshi, like we said before. And then we have the second one, on the foundation of this internal acceptance of the yoke of Hashem's kingship, it brings us to do the action of mitzvahs that expresses this acceptance of Hashem's kingship in actuality. And let's talk about the Maimer Chazal Benegel Matan Torah, that they say, just like you accepted my kingship, accept my commands and my edicts. If you do not accept my kingship, how will you fulfill my commandments? Over Teres Achsidis Muvor and Teres Achsidis it explains that Hashem's kingship is revealed. Hashem's kingship over the Jews is revealed through a Jewish king down here. That it's a level, it's like a chariot to Hashem's kingship over the Jews. Meaning to say, a king of flesh and blood has to be completely nullified to Hashem's kingship. And his entire thing is to bring Hashem's kingship into the hands of the Jews. So according to this, we can probably extrapolate and say that a Jewish king has these two concepts also. That expresses these two concepts of Hashem's kingship over the Yidden. Aleph, bittul ve'achna shel ha'am b'fnei hamelech shel mata. we have the nullification and the subjugation of the nation in front of the king down here, the physical king. HaKadosh Baruch Hu expresses the nullification and subjugation of the Yidden to Hashem. That the king of flesh and blood goes in with his power and with his name. That's number one. Number two, of Vipayel Davar, practically, Mizbate Bekach, Shamelch Shalamata Mishtamish Bekoyach Hanaga Shalai, Bichdei Lechapos as Kol Yisrael Lekaimis Mitzvah Hashem. Practically, it's expressed that the king down here uses his power of leading and ruling in order to compel the Jews to fulfill Hashem's commandments, which is the edicts, the commands of the king of above. Like we'll explain. The first concept of the king. The first concept we can find in the words of the Tzemach Tzedek that is known in his Sefer HaMitzvahs, the beginning of the mitzvah of appointing a king. The source of the intent of appointing a king is that with him and through him the Jews will be nullified to Hashem. Why? Because all the Jews have to be nullified to the king and to serve and to do everything that he commands. And the king himself is nullified to Hashem. Like David HaMelech said, Im loishivisi v'diyamamti dehainu shenag habitul Hashem kol kach belevavai ad shegam begashmis lo haya yachal lahardi me'inav ulagbiya liba v'chinas yesh v'davar ma. He was so nullified. The nullification of Hashem was so meaningful to him, so important, that in his heart, even physically, he wasn't able to lift up his eyes and to bring and to elevate his soul and to his heart into something, into an important thing. He was like inanimate, that had no movement. And being that a king is nullified to Hashem's rulership, to Hashem's kingship, and the Jews are nullified to the king, so it's found that with him and through him, that the Yidden are bittul and nullified to Hashem. And these things, these things are clear to the words that these make sense according to the words, the clear words of David HaMelech when they were crowning Shlomo HaMelech. That he chose Shlomo, my son, to sit on Hashem's on the throne of Hashem's kingship over the Yidden. And so too he continues saying, and he continues saying, and Shlomo sat on Hashem's seat as king. And according to these psukim, Chazal explain, as a pasuk yad al case ka, that the chair of Hashem shebepasuk hakavana l'chisa shel melech yisrael shlamata is intent. The intent is on the chair of a king, the Jewish king down here. Shekisahu kisei Hashem, that a king's throne is Hashem's throne. And according to this, we can explain. It's possible to explain the words of the Rambam that he established the concept of Malchus David, the kingdom of David, as a foundation in the belief of the Jews, the Jewish nation. Because of, and he wrote, "Shemichlal hayesoid hazeh shall be as Mashiach," that with the general foundation, this foundation of the coming of Mashiach, she'ein melech leYisrael elam Beis Dovid mizer shlem belvad, that there's no Jewish king except from the dynasty of David and Shlomo. And anybody that argues and differentiates on this kingdom and this family kafar b'Hashem Yisbarach v'dvarav nevi'av. He is a heretic to Hashem's words and to the words of the prophets. V'hine davar baruhu shebeikri emuna b'nichlalim rak inyanim sheyesh bahem toichen ikri v'yisodav v'yisodi she'olav oimedes emunas Yisrael. It is clear that in the fundamentals of faith are included only things that they are fundamental and foundational, which on it stands the belief in the Jewish belief. So we can understand that if the Rambam felt it important to put this in the fundamentals of faith, because it's because he sees something in the kingdom of David that is general and foundational to the belief in to the Jewish belief. And anybody that argues on it and goes against it, kafar b'Hashem Yisbarach atzmai, is going against Hashem himself. So seemingly brings up a question. What's the question? The fundamentals that were brought before are explaining the belief in Hashem's existence and His greatness, His galusay al nivraim, Hashem's revelation to the creations through Torah and prophecy, and Hashem's care for them. These things, these concepts of these Ikrei Emunah, are foundational to the religion, that without them there's no religion. How does it in all of these things come in this concept of believing in a king of flesh and blood? And why is it considered a foundation that on it the Jewish religion stands upon it? To strengthen the question, what's the difference between the kingdom of David and the Kehuna of Aharon HaKohen? Even in the Kehunas Aaron's Kehuna, there is promises in Torah, and there's a covenant, an everlasting covenant from Hashem to Aaron and his children. And it's a very, very big sin to go against the Kehuna. And with all of this, the Rambam did not make the Kehunas Aaron's Kehuna, into one of the fundamentals of faith. So seemingly it's very similar. So why is the kingdom of David made into one of the foundations, the fundamentals of faith? Why is that? So according to what we explained before, you can understand pretty well. Why? Malchus David, the kingdom of David is not only expressing a king of flesh and blood's kingship. He has a purpose that is connected to Hashem's kingship. That the king of above, Hashem, appoints the king of below. He basically, advises and tells him to become a king. The reason why it's considered as a fundamental of faith, because if you go against it, you are going against the Melech HaMoshiach, which is Hashem. So that is the first concept, the first point of the king, that the king is one with the kingship of Hashem. Yad al Kiska. What's the words? Shekisayhu kisei Hashem. That the throne of the king, Melech Melech Yisrael, is the throne of Hashem. The second concept of the king, the second point, Hanagas ha'am b'derech ha'Torah, to rule the nation in a way of Torah. Nimtza b'divrei Rambam b'Hilchos Malachim, in the laws of Malachim, be'agdaras tafkido im ha'Torah shel Melech Yisrael. in defining the purpose of a king, a Jewish king. What's his lashon? The point of the king is to make judgment and wars, to bring back the religion of truth. It's true that the king is busy with running the country in general, even in mundane things. What is his inner and fundamental purpose? Is the fulfillment of the 613 commandments through the Yidden, through the Jews, which is the religion of truth, and the fulfillment of the 7 mitzvahs of Bnei Noach, to fill the world with righteousness. The Amnam limud ve'hayra asatira zehu tafkidam shel beis din hagadol. But the teaching and the guidance of Torah is the purpose of the beis din hagadol, the big beis din. Shehem amudei hayra mehem chaku mishpat yetzel l'chol Yisrael. Ach tafkid hamelech hu shemishpat haTorah shebeis din hagadol posek izbatze bepoil al yedei am Yisrael. The purpose of the king, that he judges the Torah. That the beis din hagadol makes a judgment. It should be affected and brought out through the Yidden practically. So that's the purpose of the king. The king takes basically what the beis din rules and makes sure that it is carried out by the Yidden, by the nation. Three commands when they came into Eretz Yisrael: limnes le'melech, to appoint a king; limchos zera Amalek, to erase the seed of Amalek; livnes beis bechira, and to build the beis bechira. The Torah itself hangs the perfection of the fulfillment of the mitzvahs, of the halachas of Torah, in this, that there is a king to the Jews. Only through him is the command, is there a mitzvah to wage the wars of Hashem, to remove, to cut off the seed of Amalek, and then the mitzvah to build the Beis Hamikdash. That only then is possible the fulfillment of every single command and learn Torah. We saw practically by David HaMelech, who ayachid tachas shiltoni as kol Yisrael, that he united under one banner all the Yidden. Al yadi nishlam kibush haaretz. Through him he finished conquering the land. V'shechira me'oil zarim, and he released it from the yoke of the nations, of the strangers. Ad Hashem hiniach loy misaviv mikol oivav. Through him there was a preparations to build the Beis Hamikdash b'Yerushalayim, that was built practically through his son Shlomo. And David and Shlomo together, they created the proper situation, the proper environment for the rulership of Torah. The Torah itself rules over the Yidden, and its directives are fulfilled. Are fulfilled through the Yidden practically and in a perfect way. Why does the Rambam establish the laws of kings at the end of his sefer? Mishneh Torah, the Rebbe explains, being that the reason why the Rambam brings it, the laws of kings, at the end of the Sefer Halachis, he stresses that the perfection of the fulfillment of Torah and mitzvahs and halacha is kasher yesh inyan hamalachim, is when there is the concept of kings. And this is why in the laws of kings itself, it ends off with Melech HaMoshiach. The true expression of Malchus Hashem v'kiyum halachos haTorah kulam betzura hamalea v'hamushelas tiye al yadei Melech HaMoshiach. The perfection of all of this, the ultimate fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs, is through Melech HaMoshiach. Melachim ein matim yoser me'asher lahashlim lachtem b'hilchos elu as sefer halachos kulai. There's nothing better, there's nothing more fitting than finishing the entire Mishneh Torah, all the halachos, including all the halachos of kings, to finish it, to conclude it with the laws of Melech HaMoshiach. We will explain further later on. We'll end off with that today because Baruch Hashem, I have a few things to do right now. But everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for joining the shiur. Again, the PDF is in the description if you're following along in the PDF. If not, I highly suggest you get the sefer. It's very, very geschmack. And I think you should learn it. Do chazara. These are concepts. These are basically, I realized, it's funny. The Rebbe says, Derech HaYeshara is to learn in Mashiach. And the reason why is because, first of all, Torah is what forms the world. The world is created through Torah. So if you want to change your life, if you want to change your perspective, you do that through learning. In anything, and any case, any idea, in order to change your perspective, you do it through learning Torah. So that's number one. You have to change. You have to change in order to change your life, in order to live in a geula dika way, in order to Mashiach and Yemais Mashiach. All these things, it's through learning, and that I would say to learn the Hilchos of Nun and Beis of the Rebbe, because there the Rebbe is basically showing you what happened, and therefore with the knowledge of what we have, how to continue, how to live with the times that we're living in now. The other thing of learning in Mashiach is to familiarize yourself with the concept and how and what it means. What does Yemais Mashiach mean? What does the coming of Mashiach mean? What is Olam Haba? What are all these? Are all these things going to be? Is it exactly how it's going to be written? Are there many opinions? What are the opinions? How do we bring all the opinions together? All of these things, through learning in Yonagul Mashiach, you'll be able to familiarize yourself with Mashiach, and it won't be something so scary. Because, like we've been saying until now, that it's all things that, this is the purpose. The reason why you're here, the perfection of your eating is in Yemais Mashiach. So obviously you want Mashiach because you want to perfect your eating, to perfect your learning, to perfect your sleeping, to everything. The perfection of everything is in Yemais Mashiach. Question is, what is the purpose of creation? Right? So if the purpose of creation is to know Hashem, so you want Yemais Mashiach because that is the time when you're going to have spend the most time to be able to get to knowing Hashem, and that it is only as a vehicle, as a mediation to get to Olam Haba. If the purpose of creation is to reveal Hashem's kingship, then not only is Yemais Mashiach something you really desire, but you know how to get there. Especially after the Rebbe told us that we have to only Kabbalas HaMalchus. We have to accept Hashem, the Rebbe as Melech HaMoshiach, which is incredible. And then you have the third thing of Yemais Mashiach. The purpose of creation is Dira B'Tachtinu, to bring Hashem's dwelling place down here, to reveal how, in essence, you are Hashem and you're all one. Anyways, the point is that you should really, really learn with me on your own time. Regardless, learn in Yonei Geula O Mashiach, whether it's this sefer, whether it's at Kufa VaGeula, the Hilchos of Nun and Beis. If any sefer that goes through the concept of Mashiach and Geula is something that you should really, really open, sit and pashut learn. That is what you should learn now. Anyways, Chaim V'Levracha, everybody. I hope you have a continuous, wonderful day. And Taka, it should be that we should have the revelation of the full revelation of Melech HaMoshiach, and we should have the Mechias Amalek, the complete eradication of Amalek, and ultimately leading us to the third mitzvah of building the third base of Mikdash may be taken from Yad Mamish L'chaim Livracha Yechia Adonenu Merinu V'Rabbeinu Melech HaMoshiach L'Olam V'Ad.